Chapter 9. Under promise of absolute secrecy, Hortense repeated the upshot of her various conversations with her cousin Betty. Then, when they got home, she showed the much-talked-of seal to her father in evidence of the sagacity of her views. The father, in the depth of his heart, wondered at the skill and acumen of girls who act on instinct, discerning the simplicity of the scheme which her idealized love had suggested in the course of a single night to his guileless daughter. "You will see the masterpiece I have just bought. It is to be brought home, and that dear Wenceslas is to come with the dealer. The man who made that group ought to make a fortune. Only use your influence to get him an order for a statue and rooms at the Institute." "How you run on!" cried her father. "Why, if you had your own way, you would be man and wife within the legal period, in 11 days." "Must we wait so long?" said she, laughing. "But I fell in love with him in 5 minutes, as you fell in love with mamma at first sight. And he loves me as if we had known each other for 2 years. Yes," she said in reply to her father's look, "I read 10 volumes of love in his eyes. And will not you and mamma accept him as my husband when you see that he is a man of genius? Sculpture is the greatest of the arts," she cried, clapping her hands and jumping. "I will tell you everything." "What, is there more to come?" asked her father, smiling. The child's complete and effervescent innocence had restored her father's peace of mind. "A confession of the first importance," said she. "I loved him without knowing him, and for the last hour since seeing him, I am crazy about him." "A little too crazy," said the Baron, who was enjoying the sight of this guileless passion. "Do not punish me for confiding in you," replied she. "It is so delightful to say to my father's heart, 'I love him, I am so happy in loving him.' You will see my Wenceslas. His brow is so sad. The sun of genius shines in his gray eyes, and what an air he has! What do you think of Livonia? Is it a fine country? The idea of Cousin Betty's marrying that young fellow! She might be his mother. It would be murder. I am quite jealous of all she has ever done for him. But I don't think my marriage will please her. See, my darling, we must hide nothing from your mother. I should have to show her the seal, and I promised not to betray Cousin Lisbeth, who is afraid, she says, of mamma's laughing at her," said Hortense. "You have scruples about the seal, and none about robbing your cousin of her lover." "I promised about the seal. I made no promise about the sculptor." This adventure, patriarchal in its simplicity, came admirably apropos to the unconfessed poverty of the family. The Baron, while praising his daughter for her candour, explained to her that she must now leave matters to the discretion of her parents. "You understand, my child, that it is not your part to ascertain whether your cousin's lover is a count, if he has all his papers properly certified, and if his conduct is a guarantee for his respectability. As for your cousin, she refused 5 offers when she was 20 years younger. That will prove no obstacle, I undertake to say." "Listen to me, papa. If you really wish to see me married, never say a word to Lisbeth about it till just before the contract is signed. I have been catechizing her about this business for the last 6 months. Well, there is something about her quite inexplicable." "What?" said her father, puzzled. "Well, she looks evil when I say too much, even in joke, about her lover. Make inquiries, but leave me to row my own boat. My confidence ought to reassure you." "The Lord said, 'Suffer little children to come unto me.' You are one of those who have come back again," replied the Baron, with a touch of irony. After breakfast, the dealer was announced, and the artist with his group. The sudden flush that reddened her daughter's face at once made the Baroness suspicious and then watchful, and the girl's confusion and the light in her eyes soon betrayed the mystery so badly guarded in her simple heart. Count Steinbock, dressed in black, struck the Baron as a very gentlemanly young man. "Would you undertake a bronze statue?" he asked, as he held up the group. After admiring it on trust, he passed it on to his wife, who knew nothing about sculpture. "It is beautiful, isn't it, mamma?" said Hortense in her mother's ear. A statue? Monsieur, it is less difficult to execute a statue than to make a clock like this, which my friend here has been kind enough to bring," said the artist in reply. The dealer was placing on the dining-room sideboard the wax model of the 12 hours that the Loves were trying to delay. "Leave the clock with me," said the Baron, astounded at the beauty of the sketch. "I should like to show it to the Ministers of the Interior and of Commerce." "Who is the young man in whom you take so much interest?" the Baroness asked her daughter. "An artist who could afford to execute this model could get 100,000 francs for it," said the curiosity dealer, putting on a knowing and mysterious look as he saw that the artist and the girl were interchanging glances. "He would only need to sell 20 copies at 8,000 francs each, for the materials would cost about 1,000 crowns for each example. But if each copy were numbered and the mould destroyed, it would certainly be possible to meet with 20 amateurs only too glad to possess a replica of such a work." 100,000 francs!" cried Steinbock, looking from the dealer to Hortense, the Baron, and the Baroness. "Yes, 100,000 francs," repeated the dealer. "If I were rich enough, I would buy it of you myself for 20,000 francs, for by destroying the mould it would become a valuable property. But one of the princes ought to pay 30 or 40,000 francs for such a work to ornament his drawing-room. No man has ever succeeded in making a clock satisfactory alike to the vulgar and to the connoisseur, and this one, sir, solves the difficulty." "This is for yourself, monsieur," said Hortense, giving 6 gold pieces to the dealer. "Never breathe a word of this visit to any one living," said the artist to his friend at the door. "If you should be asked where we sold the group, mention the Duc d'Hérouville, the famous collector in the Rue de Varennes." The dealer nodded assent. "And your name?" said Hulot to the artist when he came back. "Count Steinbock." "Have you the papers that prove your identity?" "Yes, Monsieur le Baron. They are in Russian and in German, but not legalized." "Do you feel equal to undertaking a statue 9 feet high?" "Yes, monsieur." "Well, then, if the persons whom I shall consult are satisfied with your work, I can secure you the commission for the statue of Marshal Montcornet, which is to be erected on his monument at Père Lachaise. The Minister of War and the old officers of the Imperial Guard have subscribed a sum large enough to enable us to select our artist." "Oh, monsieur, it will make my fortune!" exclaimed Steinbock, overpowered by so much happiness at once. "Be easy," replied the Baron graciously. "If the 2 ministers to whom I propose to show your group and this sketch in wax are delighted with these 2 pieces, your prospects of a fortune are good." Hortense hugged her father's arm so tightly as to hurt him. "Bring me your papers, and say nothing of your hopes to anybody, not even to our old cousin Betty." "Lisbeth?" said Madame Hulot, at last understanding the end of all this, though unable to guess the means. "I could give proof of my skill by making a bust of the Baroness," added Wenceslas. The artist, struck by Madame Hulot's beauty, was comparing the mother and daughter. "Indeed, monsieur, life may smile upon you," said the Baron, quite charmed by Count Steinbock's refined and elegant manner. "You will find out that in Paris no man is clever for nothing, and that persevering toil always finds its reward here." Hortense, with a blush, held out to the young man a pretty Algerine purse containing 60 gold pieces. The artist, with something still of a gentleman's pride, responded with a mounting colour, easy enough to interpret. "This perhaps is the first money your works have brought you?" said Adeline. "Yes, madame, my works of art. It is not the first fruits of my labour, for I have been a workman." "Well, we must hope my daughter's money will bring you good luck," said she. "And take it without scruple," added the Baron, seeing that Wenceslas held the purse in his hand instead of pocketing it. "The sum will be repaid by some rich man, a prince perhaps, who will offer it with interest to possess so fine a work." "Oh, I want it too much myself, papa, to give it up to anybody in the world, even a royal prince." "I can make a far prettier thing than that for you, mademoiselle." "But it would not be this one," replied she, and then, as if ashamed of having said too much, she ran out into the garden. "Then I shall break the mould and the model as soon as I go home," said Steinbock. "Fetch me your papers, and you will hear of me before long, if you are equal to what I expect of you, monsieur." The artist on this could but take leave. After bowing to Madame Hulot and Hortense, who came in from the garden on purpose, he went off to walk in the Tuileries, not daring to return to his attic, where his tyrant would pelt him with questions and wring his secret from him. Hortense's adorer conceived of groups and statues by the hundred. He felt strong enough to hew the marble himself, like Canova, who was also a feeble man and nearly died of it. He was transfigured by Hortense, who was, to him, inspiration made visible. "Now then," said the Baroness to her daughter, "what does all this mean?" "Well, dear mamma, you have just seen Cousin Lisbeth's lover, who now, I hope, is mine. But shut your eyes, know nothing. Good heavens, I was to keep it all from you, and I cannot help telling you everything." "Good-bye, children," said the Baron, kissing his wife and daughter. "I shall perhaps go to call on the nanny, and from her I shall hear a great deal about our young man." "Papa, be cautious," said Hortense. "Oh, little girl!" cried the Baroness when Hortense had poured out her poem, of which the morning's adventure was the last canto. "Dear little girl! Artlessness will always be the artfullest puss on earth." Genuine passions have an unerring instinct. Set a greedy man before a dish of fruit, and he will make no mistake, but take the choicest, even without seeing it. In the same way, if you allow a girl who is well brought up to choose a husband for herself, if she is in a position to meet the man of her heart, rarely will she blunder. The act of nature in such cases is known as love at first sight, and in love, first sight is practically second sight. The Baroness's satisfaction, though disguised under maternal dignity, was as great as her daughter's. For of the 3 ways of marrying Hortense of which Crevel had spoken, the best, as she opined, was about to be realized, and she regarded this little drama as an answer by Providence to her fervent prayers. Mademoiselle Fischer's galley slave, obliged at last to go home, thought he might hide his joy as a lover under his glee as an artist rejoicing over his first success. "Victory! My group is sold to the Duc d'Hérouville, who is going to give me some commissions," cried he, throwing the 1,200 francs in gold on the table before the old maid. He had, as may be supposed, concealed Hortense's purse. It lay next to his heart. "And a very good thing, too," said Lisbeth. "I was working myself to death. You see, child, money comes in slowly in the business you have taken up, for this is the first you have earned, and you have been grinding at it for near on 5 years now. That money barely repays me for what you have cost me since I took your promissory note. That is all I have got by my savings. But be sure of one thing," she said, after counting the gold. "This money will all be spent on you. There is enough there to keep us going for a year. In a year you may now be able to pay your debt and have a snug little sum of your own, if you go on in the same way." Wenceslas, finding his trick successful, expatiated on the Duc d'Hérouville. "I will fit you out in a black suit and get you some new linen," said Lisbeth, "for you must appear presentably before your patrons, and then you must have a larger and better apartment than your horrible garret, and furnish it properly. You look so bright. You are not like the same creature," she added, gazing at Wenceslas. "But my work is pronounced a masterpiece." "Well, so much the better. Do some more," said the arid creature, who was nothing but practical, and incapable of understanding the joy of triumph or of beauty in art. "Trouble your head no further about what you have sold. Make something else to sell. You have spent 200 francs in money, to say nothing of your time and your labor, on that devil of a Samson. Your clock will cost you more than 2,000 francs to execute. I tell you what, if you will listen to me, you will finish the 2 little boys crowning the little girl with cornflowers. That would just suit the Parisians. I will go round to Monsieur Graff the tailor before going to Monsieur Crevel." Go up now and leave me to dress." Next day, the Baron, perfectly crazy about Madame Marneffe, went to see Cousin Betty, who was considerably amazed on opening the door to see who her visitor was, for he had never called on her before. She at once said to herself, "Can it be that Hortense wants my lover?" For she had heard the evening before, at Monsieur Crevel's, that the marriage with the Councillor of the Supreme Court was broken off. "What, cousin, you here? This is the first time you have ever been to see me, and it is certainly not for love of my fine eyes that you have come now." "Fine eyes is the truth," said the Baron. "You have as fine eyes as I have ever seen." "Come, what are you here for? I really am ashamed to receive you in such a kennel." The outer room of the two inhabited by Lisbeth served her as sitting-room, dining-room, kitchen, and work-room. The furniture was such as beseemed a well-to-do artisan. Walnut wood chairs with straw seats, a small walnut wood dining table, a work table, some coloured prints in black wooden frames, short muslin curtains to the windows, the floor well polished and shining with cleanliness, not a speck of dust anywhere, but all cold and dingy, like a picture by Terburg in every particular, even to the grey tone given by a wall-paper once blue and now faded to grey. As to the bedroom, no human being had ever penetrated its secrets. The Baron took it all in at a glance, saw the sign manual of commonness on every detail, from the cast-iron stove to the household utensils, and his gorge rose as he said to himself, "And this is virtue." "What am I here for?" said he aloud. "You are far too cunning not to guess, and I had better tell you plainly," cried he, sitting down and looking out across the courtyard through an opening he made in the puckered curtain. "There is a very pretty woman in the house." "Madame Marneffe, now I understand," she exclaimed, seeing it all. "But Josepha?" "Alas, cousin, Josepha is no more. I was turned out of doors like a discarded footman." "And you would like—" said Lisbeth, looking at the Baron with the dignity of a prude on her guard a quarter of an hour too soon. "As Madame Marneffe is very much the lady, and the wife of an employee, you can meet her without compromising yourself," the Baron went on, "and I should like to see you neighbourly. Oh, you need not be alarmed. She will have the greatest consideration for the cousin of her husband's chief." At this moment the rustle of a gown was heard on the stairs, and the footstep of a woman wearing the thinnest boots. The sound ceased on the landing. There was a tap at the door, and Madame Marneffe came in. "Pray excuse me, mademoiselle, for thus intruding upon you, but I failed to find you yesterday when I came to call. We are near neighbours, and if I had known that you were related to Monsieur le Baron, I should long since have craved your kind interest with him. I saw him come in, so I took the liberty of coming across, for my husband, Monsieur le Baron, spoke to me of a report on the office clerks which is to be laid before the minister to-morrow." She seemed quite agitated and nervous, but she had only run upstairs. "You have no need to play the petitioner, fair lady," replied the Baron. "It is I who should ask the favour of seeing you." "Very well, if mademoiselle allows it, pray come," said Madame Marneffe. "Yes, go, cousin, I will join you," said Lisbeth judiciously. The Parisienne had so confidently counted on the chief's visit and intelligence, that not only had she dressed herself for so important an interview, she had dressed her room. Early in the day it had been furnished with flowers purchased on credit. Marneffe had helped his wife to polish the furniture, down to the smallest objects, washing, brushing, and dusting everything. Valerie wished to be found in an atmosphere of sweetness, to attract the chief and to please him enough to have a right to be cruel, to tantalize him as a child would, with all the tricks of fashionable tactics. She had gauged Hulot. Give a Paris woman at bay 24 hours, and she will overthrow a ministry. The man of the Empire, accustomed to the ways of the Empire, was no doubt quite ignorant of the ways of modern love-making, of the scruples in vogue, and the various styles of conversation invented since 1830, which led to the poor weak woman being regarded as the victim of her lover's desires, a sister of charity salving a wound, an angel sacrificing herself. This modern art of love uses a vast amount of evangelical phrases in the service of the devil. Passion is martyrdom. Both parties aspire to the ideal, to the infinite. Love is to make them so much better. All these fine words are but a pretext for putting increased ardor into the practical side of it, more frenzy into a fall than of old. This hypocrisy, a characteristic of the times, is a gangrene in gallantry. The lovers are both angels, and they behave, if they can, like two devils. Love had no time for such subtle analysis between two campaigns, and in 1809 its successes were as rapid as those of the Empire. So, under the Restoration, the handsome Baron, a lady's man once more, had begun by consoling some old friends now fallen from the political firmament like extinguished stars, and then, as he grew old, was captured by Jenny Cadine and Josepha. Madame Marneffe had placed her batteries after due study of the Baron's past life, which her husband had narrated in much detail after picking up some information in the offices. The comedy of modern sentiment might have the charm of novelty to the Baron. Valerie had made up her mind as to her scheme, and we may say the trial of her power that she made this morning answered her highest expectations. End of chapter 9.